We want to start off with a reminder that we are not doctors. Before you make any changes or try something new, always consult with your doctor and medical team first. Chronic illness can vary from patient to patient, so it's always best to consult with your own doctor for what is best for you.
Hello and welcome to IBD Determined. I'm your host, Mason Harvey. I speak from the role of a patient and I have Crohn's disease.
And I'm Michelle Harvey. I'm Mason's mom, and I also speak in the role of a caregiver on this podcast. And today's podcast is going to cover something that is often really not talked about in the IBD world. And so I think it's something that's really important to bring up. And that is your cognitive functions with this disease. And I don't know why it's not more discussed. I think maybe people don't connect things. Maybe they don't realize because they think IBD is strictly something that is a gut issue or inflammatory
Affects
issue.
the intestines or digestive tract.
Yeah, and so they're thinking, "Oh, it's autoimmune condition," so not really connecting these things, but there is actually a real connection, and Mason's GI is the one who brought these up. So anyways, the important thing to remember as we go through this today
Yes.
is that I don't want anyone to think this is a definitive guide to what everyone with IBD will have. And so some of you may never experience these, some of you may already know about this, and some of you may have a few of these things. And
Because Crohn's is different for everybody.
so the main thing is to listen to this to just gain some knowledge. And if you do have any, questions, or maybe you're like, I think I'm experiencing some of this, or that's when you will discuss this with your own medical team. So that's what this is supposed to be, to bring up a further discussion and maybe just validate some of your feelings and some of your experiences for those of you out there, and maybe make some connections, so you will talk to your doctor and say, "Hey, I this has been going on. What do you think?" So, one of the things that I always used to hear is people would talk about brain fog with
Mhm.
this.
Brain fog.
And also, I'm not going to ask Mason, like, I'm not going to ask you to give your own experiences because
'Cause
it
I don't
might
recall
be.
having this.
Yeah, so I know. Well, and you may not, I mean, you may have had brain fog and didn't
I didn't
realize what.
realize it because my brain was too foggy to
Right.
realize.
Maybe you didn't realize because you're a
However,
kid. I think maybe adults may
might realize it,
recognize some of this more easily, and kids might think this is normal because when you have IBD as a child or as a young teen, these things become very normal. So you may not realize, but if this is an
adapt to
onset.
it kind of.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And if you have the onset as an adult, you will notice the changes because you're going to say, wow, this feels different than normal for my brain. Whereas for you guys, you might just think this is
Okay, well,
normal.
it's normal.
This is,
Normal.
yeah. So it's just perception, age, different things like that. So I've heard that talk, and I often wondered, brain fog, okay. And then your doctor mentioned also that there's a compromised attention and concentration that can be affected with this as well, and which is interesting.
Like not being able to focus as much.
Yeah, and and these things can also be you can have other diagnoses that may encompass some of these that could make sense. And so, for those of you listening, his doctor also discussed a reduced capacity to process information, which is interesting.
Mhm.
Another one she had mentioned was memory disruption, and also a reduced ability to multitask. Those were some of the just a few,
Yeah, just a
and
few.
yeah, that were mentioned.
I feel
And
like I can multitask, but at the same time, when I try to multitask, I'm like, no.
yeah, so again, it's interesting. As we read through these, what we did is we put together like multiple studies and results of these studies, so we can better inform you guys out there to help you understand the changes in cognitive function with IBD, and also hear that people are doing research on this, because I think that's important, because obviously people are starting to recognize, hey, this is
It's,
real,
yeah, it's not just all about the digestive system. There's a lot more going on
Yeah.
that needs to be figured out.
I think it's important. It's very important for your mental health too, because I feel like people are like, is it all in my
Is
mind?
it just me? Am I
Is it
going
just me?
insane?
And maybe you're doing these things and things are more tough for you, more difficult, and
Mm,
you're feeling like this is just normal, but it's not
mm,
normal. Maybe it's not. So something you've thought all along is just how you operate. Maybe it has something to do with IBD.
mhm.
So again,
Interesting.
important things to talk about with your doctor, therapist, any of those.
Yeah.
And so one of the things is, so if our doctor provided these explanations to us, why don't we hear more about this? It seems like people with Crohn's disease, from what I see, they will complain of these different symptoms. I say the word complain, not in a negative light, but I guess you could say they share their symptoms.
Share complaints, share
Yeah.
symptoms.
And so, sometimes they'll talk about they have difficulty concentrating or they have a clouding of thought. And, you know, it could make sense that there is something going on. There is a cognitive dysfunction, and that could be a concern for you guys. But why are there so few studies? Why are
Why
doctors
isn't
not
it
talking about this?
why isn't there that much attention put onto it, you know?
Yeah,
To
because I
be
think that's
fair
important.
yeah, well, to be fair, though, there's Crohn's disease is still so new.
Hmm.
It's not like they can figure everything out at
Yeah.
once, you know? While they're trying to figure out something else, they're gonna have to sacrifice, a the observation of something else, so
Hmm.
they have to put things aside.
And maybe as more research is going towards
Mm.
one thing, they're not researching something else. And also
Once you
gastro.
start figuring other things out, though,
Hmm.
it might be like, one of those, those puzzles where you have to draw dot to dot to dot,
Yeah, that's what
because
I
it
feel
starts
like.
one thing leads to another,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, no, but I think that could be true because you're focusing on everything. Like a gastroenterologist isn't going to necessarily know about cognitive function.
Mhm.
They're not necessarily, that's not going to be their line of work. So maybe there has been, studies going on, but more focused on the GI route, and maybe this is what's happening. More people are starting to realize that this is multifaceted. This disease could have
Multiple effects.
multiple effects. Yeah. So there are real changes in cognitive function from everything I read. That's kind of what I came up with. And cognitive impairment is a potential extra intestinal manifestation of IBD. So outside of the intestinal system, outside of all that, there are other manifestations with this disease. And it looks like cognitive impairment is one of them. So in one,
Just one.
yeah, just one.
There's a lot of other things.
Mhm. Yeah. So, in one publication, people with IBD show a loss in attention and executive function, particularly in working memory. And so, I think this is important though, too,
Mhm.
because kids, like for school. And in another study, it claims there are clearly effects on the brain as depicted by the increased incidence of psychological stress, mood disorder, and impairment of neurologic or cognitive function.
That's not good.
And then in another study, they discuss how they use the subtle cognitive impairment test, SCIT. And in using that test, they found that those with active Crohn's disease are more likely to report severe cognitive fatigue.
Hmm,
So, again,
interesting.
yeah. So, in most of these studies, it seems like they're talking about, are people like, because my question was, are they in remission or is the disease active?
Is it
So is your cognitive, is this ability only affected
when you're in a
when you're in a
flare?
flare? Like, that's what I was
Mhm.
wondering. So it's like, is it,
Interesting.
yeah. So
Has the Will there be a part in that that says that?
yeah, we're about to
Okay,
talk
cool,
about
cool,
that.
cool.
Yeah. Cause I mean, that is a question, right? Like, so you start wondering, is it
Mhm.
the inflammation that's causing this? Like, what is it?
'Cause there's
So
things that are affected that aren't just a, digestive tract,
yeah.
other things, like joint pain.
Hmm.
And, I do not have joint pain right now, I'm not in a flare. Obviously, it's different for everybody, so you might have joint pain while not being in a flare,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
I do not have joint pain if I'm not in a flare. It's more like a symptom. So, if this is like a symptom, you could say,
Right.
would that mean you only have it in a
Like in a
flare?
flares,
Mhm,
right? And I'm sure they must be studying that.
mhm,
There must be some kind of connections to that. So, but I was asking myself the same thing, like, what about when in remission? So, impaired cognitive function is a stable feature of people with
mhm,
Crohn's.
mhm.
But the data suggests that even when in remission, the functional impact of cognition is still evident. So,
Still evident.
yeah. So there is some impact there in some of these studies that were done that even when in remission, it was still affected.
Mm,
So it doesn't, and they are different studies. That's the important thing to remember. These are all individual, different companies, different
yeah,
people, different scientists, different people,
they're all
different
gonna find different
interests.
things.
Yeah. So I can't like find all of them, but I did research a lot. And so
Yeah,
this is what I did find.
it's very good.
Yeah, and that same study I was just talking about, so they said it's still unclear at the present time if physiological changes due to disease activity play a role in cognitive impairment in Crohn's disease.
Interesting.
And I looked at another study too, because this one looked at psychiatric problems, which included depression, anxiety, and fatigue. And that study found that they are twice as common in IBD patients as that in the healthy population.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
I can
so,
see fatigue though, because if you're in a flare and you're having malnutrition,
yeah.
you would and fatigue is feeling more tired, right?
Yeah, the fatigue is
Fatigue,
just
yeah.
being more tired. Yeah.
So obviously that makes more sense, and you might be getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom.
Right.
You're not getting all the sleep that you need. So obviously, I feel like fatigue.
And that's important that you mention that because these are like, it's like, so what is the cause here? Is it the disease? Is it the side effects of the disease that are causing fatigue? Or do you feel fatigue when you're in remission? Because I think
Okay.
for you in remission, the level you're at least, you aren't fatigued. You're
Yeah.
not feeling tired, but someone else might. And so I guess it just depends how it's affecting you and where the disease currently is,
That's an
what part of the
interesting
body.
way to put it. Is it directly caused by Crohn's,
Hmm.
or is it caused by symptoms of Crohn's disease?
Right.
Like, am I just feeling tired because Crohn's? Is that like the
Right.
reason I
Like
feel
Crohn's
fatigue?
just commit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Because
is
you have an autoimmune
yeah.
disease.
Or is it because I'm in a flare and I'm not getting as much sleep
Right.
as I need and I'm not getting the nutrition stuff? Or is it just Crohn's itself that's
Yeah.
causing the fatigue?
And I mean, and
Obviously.
that kind of goes along with the other one, which was
Mhm.
depression and anxiety. So it's kind of like, is it situational symptoms, side
Mhm.
effects, or is it the disease itself directly doing that? But at any rate, no matter what, it's still present
Yeah.
in IBD patients. And so in that same study, they examined this, I thought was really interesting, neurological imaging in IBD patients, and it showed alterations in the gray matter
Mm.
areas that are responsible for information processing and memory, as well as diffuse hyperintensity in the white matter in your brain,
And so
right?
gray matter and white matter
The
are
gray matter and the
depicting
white
areas in
matter.
your brain.
Yeah. So this was in addition to alterations in the global network organization and regional connectivity in the brain. So they were looking at these images that actually could show it was affected.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So you can
Right.
that's affected and not just mental state.
Right. It's not like someone just saying, no, this is what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
It's like they could actually see in this particular study, they could see the differences.
That's crazy. That's not good.
Right. So not great,
Yeah, it's
no,
not
but
good.
also it proves that it's real.
Yeah, it
I
does prove
think
that
because
it's
for
real.
some people I
It's
think it's
not just me.
frustrating. Right? Because it's like, am I causing this? Am I doing this?
Mhm.
Can I? And so it's like
No, it's
when actually
Crohn's.
changes because Crohn's, I wonder if it has to do with inflammation
Mhm.
because if it could occur in the brain. I don't know if that's like silly to
Maybe.
say or what, but
Well, there's
uh,
definitely something there because white blood cells, if your white blood cells are functioning properly, they are gonna attack the germs or
what they're supposed
yeah,
to.
what they're supposed to attack.
Mhm.
But if you're maybe something in the brain didn't develop, then the white blood cells didn't get the right cue to attack the right things, and so now they just attack everything.
I mean, that could be
Mm,
interesting too. I
might have
know, right
something
there.
to
I mean, I could look up studies. I'm telling you, if I had more time, and I
She's
don't.
using her
I'm
free
supposed to be
time.
making cookies today.
Oh, well,
So
after the podcast.
along with work, along with, yeah, school projects.
Uh,
So it's yeah, so if I like ever I always think about these things. I will jump down rabbit holes all the time and I'm chasing ideas. I'm always looking up something because it kind of pops up like that. Like, well, what if? Like, what if this caused this? And then what about this? And so yeah, I think it's very interesting. The
yeah,
possibilities seem kind of like endless.
endless.
And it'd be interesting to say who's working on what. Like
Yeah.
who out there is doing what to kind of figure this out. And so there was another study, and it found that people with IBD show deficits, and so something they lack in attention and executive function, particularly in the working memory, which suggests that cognitive impairment is a potential. So, like what we already kind of talked about. So,
So basically, you're just saying bad memory. Yeah.
right. And there is a doctor, so we have a name here because all these other studies there are numerous studies that I pieced together, which
Mhm.
and they all kind of have found the same thing, which is interesting. They
So
all
they're
kind
all
of
pointing
led to the
toward the
same
same thing.
conclusion. Yeah,
That's interesting because sometimes you'll have studies and they're pointing in opposite directions.
right. Like one will contradict the
Mhm.
other, but they all really seem to be
They're all
heading
pointing
in the
toward the
same
same
in
thing.
agreement that there is some kind of change in cognitive function.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, which is interesting. And so there's a doctor, Dr. Daniel Van Langenberg.
Dr. Van. Dr. Daniel
Van
Van
Langenberg.
Langenberg
Yeah,
at
sounds
Langenberg,
fancy.
yeah.
We'll say it like that.
Yeah, that's how the name is pronounced
That's how
currently,
we're
yeah.
saying it now.
If
So
we
yeah.
are saying your name wrong, I'm
Right,
so
you're gonna have to change
sorry.
your name, Dr. Daniel Van Langenberg,
Yeah,
because this is your new one.
that's how you say it.
So,
Poor guy.
so he's led research on patients, and these patients were frequently experiencing cognitive symptoms. So his findings reinforce the notion that Crohn's has a wide range of multisystemic consequences, and the impact of the disease can affect patients beyond the digestive tract. And so that's what he's been looking into. And in his this was a really interesting one to
Mhm.
me. So I was telling your dad about this because
Yeah,
I was like, this is wild.
very wild.
So in his study of patients with Crohn's
And this is Dr.
disease,
Daniel.
yes,
Okay.
our good friend
He's
Dr.
still here.
Daniel Van
He hasn't
Lingenberg,
left.
yeah, in his study of patients with Crohn's disease, cognitive response times were 10% slower than normal and significantly correlated with symptoms of active inflammation,
Hmm.
including
Yeah.
abdominal pain and fatigue.
So
So
active.
he noticed, and these are response times to things,
Mhm.
cognitive response times. So he had correlated that to active inflammation. So
So that means while you're in a flare?
yeah.
Yeah.
So while in a flare, or even if you're in remission but not fully in remission, you could still have some inflammation going on, but it's not going to be as severe. But
Interesting.
with when you do have with that abdominal pain and fatigue,
Mm.
he knows that the cognitive response times were 10% slower.
I feel like that kinda makes sense too.
Right.
Because if I have, um, abdominal pain,
Hmm.
obviously I'm gonna be focused on the pain,
Right.
and I won't be focusing as much as what else I'm doing.
Right. It's distracting,
It's
right? It's
distracting.
it's very distracting to have all these things going on. And so this was what was really interesting in addition to that fact. So the response time in the Crohn's patients were slower than those assessed in people over the legal drinking and driving limit in most European countries.
That's
And
great.
in those countries, its blood alcohol content above 0.05 grams. Um, that's that's not great.
Yeah. I
That's, I
can't be
mean,
driving.
well, and that was his point, almost that there's something going on there, and that's,
It's illegal to drink and drive, but
um,
someone with Crohn's can drive.
and the way they did figure this out, they had a group of, obviously, because your dad had asked, what were the Crohn's patients drinking? I said, no,
No.
no, it was a
Uh,
group. They had a group of people who had been drinking and a group of Crohn's patients. And
oh.
and they both were assessed on the same computer-based cognitive test.
Hmm.
So they both, so, you had one test group that just had Crohn's and had active inflammation symptoms. They did the test. And then you had another group who was above the drinking limit, the legal drinking and driving limit. And they also took the same test. And the results were that Crohn's patients were 10% slower.
Oh, well, a good thing for Crohn's people that, self-driving cars are coming out soon.
I know. I mean, that's why I think these studies are important though,
Yeah.
because I think for so long, certain patients are saying these things and doctors are like, yeah, yeah, but are you really? And
No,
so
yes, I
and
really am.
again, this isn't to scare people and say this is going to be everybody. These are different studies. I don't have all the details on the studies. It may not be as black and white as we're discussing,
There's probably
but
a lot more to
yes.
it.
So not to
Remember,
worry.
were people reading,
Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to bring attention to
yeah,
notable studies and facts that we're finding because it's
we're not
really
scientists behind this.
interesting. Yeah, no, we're not the scientists behind this. We're not researching this,
No.
but I think it's important to learn and to be aware of things and to realize that maybe if you are feeling a certain way, maybe you shouldn't be driving. Maybe you shouldn't be going into work. And I think it may eliminate some guilt for people because I think you always push yourselves to do stuff because you don't want to be like known as the sick person or the person always missing work or missing school. But I think it is important to listen to your body and to realize that yeah, you are right. Something isn't well. I think it's
It's
important.
very interesting.
So I thought that was really, yeah, that one was like, whoa. Or,
Yeah.
he mentioned operating heavy machinery. So I don't, so interesting. And
Yippee.
this was his study. And so in addition to those wonderful facts, he also had findings that appeared consistent with the experiments that had shown that bowel inflammation results in an upregulation of inflammatory hippocampus activity in the brain.
I just
So,
made that up.
yeah,
Hippocampus.
the hippocampus. And so that is what may account for the slower response times that were
Mm,
observed in the study.
interesting.
So that he was making that connection that there was an actual connection happening and he was figuring that out. So I think
Hmm,
that's great that there are people really studying this and finding these connections. It is so important to have this kind of information. So
interesting.
just hope we're not like, and again, guys, I hope none of you listening like, oh my gosh, like
Oh no, that's gonna be me. No.
it's just I really these are all things you can discuss with your doctor
Mhm.
and just it's just for educational purposes
Purposes,
here,
yes.
just to just always to keep learning. And
Everyone, it's
so
important to learn.
the results of the study demonstrated the presence of mild cognitive impairment in Crohn's patients, and it supported the patients. That's what's important here. It supported their frequent comments of the difficulties in concentration, the clouding of thought and memory lapses. And so it's nice to have, I think, like to be validated
Mhm.
and have someone believe like there is more to it and not just write
Definitely.
you off. And so I think that's interesting. And another article that I
Okay.
read, this one, there's another connection. Patients with inflammatory bowel disease have been shown to have abnormal brain morphometry. I don't morphometry.
Well, whatever it is, if it's abnormal, I assume that's not good.
Basically function.
Yeah,
Okay, so I should probably just say have
function.
abnormal brain function,
Yeah, well, that's not good.
which are associated with physiological symptoms such as stress, depression, or anxiety. So kind of like the other study we found, they're looking at the physiological symptoms as well. And they also made that connection with depression, anxiety, and this one stress.
Hmm.
And so that, I mean, it's again hard to say, right? Like, did the symptoms cause the stress or the anxiety or the
Yeah, or
depression,
is
or
it
is the
just Crohn's
actual
itself, the
disease?
cognitive?
Right. Is that what's triggering, like making you more stressed than you normally would be, giving you
Interesting.
more anxiety? So, so that's interesting too. And that article also discussed the white matter of the brain, and their results show that Crohn's patients may experience changes in white matter microstructural properties, which could be a biomarker of neuropsychiatric comorbidities of Crohn's disease.
And it doesn't mention gray matter.
No, this one in particular was white matter. And so because it goes into a
But
little
once again,
more
it's still pointing in the same direction.
it is. And so they're really looking at these actual physical changes they can see in the brain.
Interesting.
And so, and again, what about when in remission with this one? So for them, they said that patients in remission exhibit alterations in white matter tracts,
Okay, once again.
in which this part of the brain includes the language,
Sensory motor?
sensory motor,
Sensory.
okay, attention, executive function, pain, depression, and anxiety feelings. Right? So that's interesting
Language.
because that is the part that is responsible for that, and that could make sense, right?
So alters language?
Like, the part where you
Interesting.
speak yeah, I mean, you're not gonna be speaking a different language.
My default settings are
It's not gonna you're not gonna suddenly, like, know how to speak something that you never
I'm just
have.
gonna speak a
It's
totally
your
different
own
language all of
like,
a sudden.
yeah, it could affect
Yeah,
your own,
yeah,
speech and your own your language
interesting.
in that way. I don't know. Maybe
Okay.
I don't wanna interpret that one. I don't, and they also indicated a correlation between white matter patterns and anxiety outcomes and disease duration. So for this one, the white matter connectivity may therefore serve as a biomarker of neuropsychiatric comorbidities of Crohn's disease. So that's how the connection, what I just talked about above, how it all
Interesting.
plays into it. So anyways, that's all we have as far as our research and articles. And I just think that the important takeaway here is to say, I mean, after hearing all this,
Mhm.
do you think that IBD has a connection to cognitive function
Yes.
changes? Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm glad we looked into it because when your doctor had brought it up, and I mean, there's different things we can definitely, you know, which we don't need to go into, but with Mason, with any of you who have this, you may relate to some of these. And I think it's just important to know, maybe to understand and also maybe have some compassion for somebody. Like if it is your child and you're like getting
Mhm.
frustrated because it's like, why don't you remember
Why
this?
can't you drive?
Why can't no. So it's like if you are getting frustrated with someone because maybe their attention, they're having issues with that. Maybe they are being forgetful, maybe they're tired. This is not something that they're, like, creating
No, it's
and
not
trying
their
to be
fault.
difficult, like, saying, "We're just trying,"
Anything with Crohn's is not your fault.
No.
You can't cause it. You can't so you can't cause Crohn's disease. That's the main thing. People think it's my fault, I caused it. No, you didn't cause it. Sometimes and stress cannot cause it either. All it
Right.
does is Crohn's disease will be dormant, and then you might have an impulse of stress or something along the way else that comes along and makes it so it's no longer dormant. It wakes it up.
Right.
So it was always there, but now you're starting to notice it,
Right.
which might be good. So now you're getting treatments for it.
Right. And once it's awake, it's awake.
It's
And so,
staying.
yeah, so it is important to recognize triggers and all sorts
Mhm,
of things. And as a caregiver, I think this is extremely important because it can help us better understand
mhm.
whether it's your
The
child,
patient.
whether it's a family member, whether whatever the patient is that you're caregiving for, this may help you feel better and think, okay, this is something that they're really struggling with.
Mm,
And maybe you can pay attention to it as well to help them discuss it at their doctor's appointment. Make a list, help them because it may be very normal to them, especially to a child, because they could have I don't know how long, the other interesting thing, 'cause I don't think they do a bunch of studies on children.
mhm.
So, but wouldn't it be interesting to
Maybe
see
different.
if some of these cognitive changes come before before you recognize the
Maybe.
physical symptoms?
Maybe, like and maybe it's always there, so if they look
Like,
at
so maybe if
oh,
they have struggled with I have no idea, but I think it'd be an interesting study to see how many of these kids are also diagnosed with things like ADHD or, anxiety disorder.
mhm,
Like,
or
see what the
speech or
connection is.
language.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think it's definitely something worth talking about. And it kind of had I enjoyed researching this and kind of seeing how many people were actually working on it because it
Yeah,
gave
I
me
enjoyed
hope.
learning about it. I hope
Yeah.
you did too.
Yeah, I hope so too. I know. I hope you guys got some value out of it. And if anything, it gives you something to discuss with your doctors and to also maybe just relate to. And you guys are, all of you guys that go through this, you can relate to certain things together. And I think that is important. It's important for caregivers to be able to relate to this as well and understand. So we can be better parents, be better caregivers.
And
And
help more, understand more.
right, and even if
These
you're not a
things.
caregiver, if you're not a patient, if you're just a friend,
You
family
can
member, I mean,
understand your friend with Crohn's disease if they have Crohn's disease a
yeah,
bit more, you know?
I think these kind of episodes are great for them to listen to as well, so they can really understand that this disease is so much more than what a lot of people think it is. And, like we have a whole episode on why IBS is not IBD, not the same thing
No,
at
it's
all,
not.
not the same. And so many people with IBS think that they understand what IBD people with IBD go through.
It's like,
And it's like, well, you may have similar
yeah.
symptoms to
You have
things.
similar things, but it's not
Right.
the same.
But it's just not the same, and there's so much more with IBD, and I mean, it's not to knock IBS,
No.
but it's just saying
Each
it's
one
not the
has its
same
own hard
thing.
times, yeah.
Right, it's not it's
There's
just you can't really can't compare them is I guess what I'm saying, and so many people try to,
mm,
don't.
there's a reason one is called IBD and the other is called IBS.
Yeah.
They're not named the same thing.
No, they don't even stand for the same thing, and unfortunately, because one has bowel in it and the other one does, it's like people automatically think, "Oh, it's," but anyways, the point is to say don't compare because they're not the same.
Yeah,
And people with IBD are going to have these other symptoms that you may not realize are part of the disease. And I think it's also important because if some of these are only present, now it does seem like it's present in remission. That's what I'm getting to. I think that the cognitive changes remain when you're in remission, but it seems like maybe it gets worse when you're flaring. So
me,
if it is the case, it's important to kind of watch for changes in behavior to maybe signal a flare.
pretty
It
interesting.
could be another piece of the puzzle. So,
Yeah, that would be another study maybe. By the time we
so
come back to this podcast,
yeah,
maybe there'll be another study.
yeah. I mean, I'd like to look up. Hopefully, there's more in the future to talk about this because it looks like more people are interested in finding out about this. And I'm just really glad his GI brought it up to us because it's very helpful to understand and, it makes sense of behavior. It's just a very helpful thing to understand those cognitive changes and how the functions will change with IBD.
Definitely.
So with that, we didn't start it off with like our, guess what happened this week
This
to
week.
us?
Yeah.
But if you go to Team IB Determined on
Facebook.
Instagram,
Instagram,
yeah,
my bad.
yeah, no, it's fine. Go to Team IB Determined on Instagram. You're gonna see Mason wearing Tillamook swag, and
Tillamook swag.
he got it was the coolest thing. So we had a really cool
Got a
week.
Tillamook care
Yeah,
package.
this was like the highlight. I mean, well, no, I mean you got to go golfing too.
And I
So
got golfing. Yeah.
yeah, and we got
Yeah,
to have lunch with a really cool
very,
friend.
very cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so we got to do that. And then when we got home, there was a package for Mason from Tillamook.
Tillamook. I
And
think what is so cool about Tillamook is because you go to the store, you see Tillamook everywhere, right? It's
yeah,
just a cheese brand, right? I think it's so
and ice
cool.
cream
And ice
and
cream,
pizza,
cheese,
butter.
anything
Yes.
dairy, pretty much.
Yes.
I think it's so cool though that such a large company can show their appreciation that much, by
Yeah.
sending a box just to someone, I think that is so cool.
Yeah, I mean they are it had always been Mason, like he always wanted to go to a creamery to go visit like a dairy I just something when he was a kid he
Yes.
wanted to. So
I still do.
we finally took him in 2019, and then the plan was to go back because it was so cool. Like, so excited,
Yeah.
like so excited to go back, and unfortunately we weren't able to make it. So what we had done, because we planned to go in October and we had to cancel that trip. And
Silly.
so we tried to bring Tillamook to Mason. So I went to Tillamook online and ordered like a 2019 aged white cheddar.
Because that's the same year we went.
That's the same year we went. So I thought, okay, I'll bring him a cheddar from the year we had been there. And then I went to the store and I bought like everything Tillamook. And we found the recipes online because Tillamook has some great recipes
Yes, they
online.
do.
And we made a bunch of Tillamook
Tillamook.
dishes with it.
We made Tillamook mac and cheese. We made Tillamook pizza.
Grilled cheese with
Grilled
tomato
cheese.
soup.
Grilled cheese with tomato soup.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I had written to them because they had everything they're just their customer service is top notch there. And I just thanked them and said,
It's not cheesy at all.
yeah, no.
Yeah.
So and so I had thanked them. I just sent them a note saying how awesome they were and how much they meant to our family. And so like 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, after we did all this, is when I got a call from Stephanie and Tillamook,
Mhm.
and she was like, "Hey, we'd like to send some Till Love to
Love.
Mason." Yeah, and I was like, "Okay." And so she's like, "What size sweatshirt does he wear?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is so cool!" But in the box, he got like so much
I
more.
got a Tillamook beanie.
Uh-huh.
Very cool looking
Yeah, it's
beanie. The
awesome.
Tillamook sweater.
Uh-huh.
I got a
Tillamook
Tillamook.
hat.
What is it called? The sipper.
Oh yeah, like
I
a
think it's a
drink
sipper.
sipper.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
Tillamook sipper. I got a cool old picture of
the Tillamook
the old
Creamery.
creamery, and it said, "Hope you come back soon."
You got
Whatever.
Tillamook socks.
Tillamook socks. I got a card from them, from everybody at the
Mhm.
Tella team.
Yeah, and you
Um,
got the cheese curd pin.
oh, and I got a cheese curd pin. Yes,
Yeah,
and actually, cheese curds are one of my favorite
they
things.
are.
One of my
So
favorite.
that was like perfect. And I don't even know how they guessed that, but that was perfect. And
It's so
so,
cool.
yeah, so that was like, so if you look on our Team IB Determined on Instagram, you'll see pictures of Mason wearing it. You also see our trip to the golf course this week, and we donated Mason's old
Golf
set of
clubs,
golf
all the
clubs to Pro Kids
lefties.
Golf. Yeah. So they're going to be valuable because not a whole lot of left-handed golf clubs for kids get donated. So, and they were great clubs. They
Yes, they
never
were.
were used because Mason got them right before he got
Yeah.
sick.
I
So
actually did use them a few times, and
when,
they
yeah,
were really good.
but yeah, but you're too big
Yeah,
for
but I
them.
was too big. But if I was smaller,
They would
they'd
have
be
been
really good.
so nice, but you were a little
Yeah.
too big. So he
So
got
whoever's
new
gonna get
clothes.
them, I really hope you enjoy.
Yeah. So Pro Kids is great for a lot of kids out there.
Yes.
So yes, we did that. And yeah, it was a good week. And now we're doing a snack drive for the San Diego Blood Bank.
Like it.
And
Blood,
that's,
blood bank.
yeah,
Blood. I don't know.
I don't
Blood
know.
bank.
Tired.
Yes.
So that's why we're making cookies now because we're going to be throwing them a kind of little Christmas party, bring
Mhm.
them treats. And when we bring the snack food drive,
For the
snack food stuff.
wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful donators.
Yeah. So we're going to do that. So that is this week. And yeah. And then we'll be having
Then-
pretty soon. It's the holidays are
yeah.
coming up quick.
And I'm getting my Thanksgiving infusion tomorrow. On
Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna put some turkey in it. Some cranberry sauce.
It's
Yes,
right.
my Vin's gonna love that.
Really expensive meal. I have to tell you. That's like the most expensive meal ever.
Comes with a side of bone drill and
Yeah,
Tylenol.
Tylenol. Oh,
Yeah.
good stuff. Good stuff.
Mhm.
So so anyways, yeah, follow us on Team I Be
Yes.
Determined. You'll be able to see those pictures and kind of follow up and follow us and keep up on our journeys. And also the Reggie Project is another one you can follow. And Karmatude candles. Holidays are here. We have candles. So if you want to get
Yes.
any gifts that will help
Christmas is
benefit the
rolling
Cards
out.
and Colitis Foundation, that's what you would like
Yes.
to get people. They will love candles, wax melts, room sprays. We got it.
Yes.
So
I recommend the Holly Jolly candle.
yeah, Holly Jolly is amazing. So if you guys get your hands on that, do it.
Mhm.
That's
You
a
have
good
a
idea.
giant influx in that.
Yeah, I know. So hopefully
Yes.
that'd be great, because I'd love to see you guys get to experience some of our candles because
Mhm.
they are really
Made with love, really.
yeah, and they're great candles. They are definitely a high-end, well-made, well thought out candle. And so anyways, yeah. Check out Carmitude Candles on Instagram as well. And you guys can listen to us anytime on stations like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. And
And those will be linked in the description at Buzzsprout, where there's
yeah,
even more different podcast
lots of
stations. Yes.
stations are got us on there. Yeah.
And something that's still kind of new, but starting to get old now is YouTube podcasts. Every
Yeah.
time I say that they're new, but
They're
they've been here for a while now.
yeah, yeah.
So you can listen to us on YouTube by the YouTube podcast. But if you want to watch us and listen to us, because who wouldn't,
Yeah.
go to the YouTube videos. And if you are already watching us on the podcast, listening to us on the podcast, or watching us on the video, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to be notified every time we post a new video, make sure to hit that bell icon and please leave a comment. We love
Yes.
reading your comments. And
And if you watch this, you get like this bonus footage of getting to see us relaxing, what it looks like. And
just chilling.
Mason's got a Christmas shirt on.
Sadly, I
He's
do
got
not
his
have.
flannel and
Yeah, I'm just
oh,
gonna show a part of my Christmas shirt because if I show all of it, we're probably gonna get copyrighted.
it's a Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a
So
problem.
yeah, so he's already, I mean,
Technically Christmas sweater, kind of,
yeah.
honestly.
So yeah, so
Christmas
you
flannel.
it's a bonus. So anyways, yeah, you guys can watch us on YouTube. And we know because we do that because I know some people like to watch and listen and some
Mhm.
people just like to listen. So we always
Yeah,
try to offer a few different options for any way
the more
that is your
options, the
listening
better.
style. Yeah. So with that, we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode.
Yes,
And hopefully this episode was a good one for you guys.
and we
And
enjoyed it.
if there's anything that's important to you, throw it out in the comments. Let us know what we might be able to talk about that is important to you. And we'd love to be able to do that if it works out. So have a great weekend,
You can,
work week, work day, school
Thanksgiving
day.
break. I don't
I
know
know, depending when you're
whatever's going
listening
on.
to this.
A weekend, weekday,
Yeah,
Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
whatever it is. Have a good one.
Yes,
And we'll see you guys soon on the next
episode.
episode.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.
Share some love.
We hope you will stick around, tune in, and reach out to us with your own journeys. We are excited to give you an inside view of what it takes to be a caregiver and what it's like to be a patient.
And most of all, we hope you'll maybe be able to play something you hear on here that might help you in your own life. Sometimes life changes, and it's all about how you handle the journey.